Patty Chesney makes them and brings them and shares them.
How are you?
Oh,
You're not
fighting off a cold.
You're a little ill.
I don't think. I'm trying
I
not to spread
appreciate
my
you not
germs.
spreading.
I hate being sick. Worst. I was thinking I'd pack it in and be in bed all day, but
Yeah, not sick enough to be sick, but
it just makes everything you do miserable that much harder.
just reminds you 24 hours a day that you don't feel well.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you go up to Boise?
No.
Or didn't either? I had to work this weekend. So.
Yeah. Did JD win both theirs?
Yes. Everybody won everything except for the.
It's a good thing, and
I had to walk out. We have a meeting that has a TV like that for safety meetings at the first and before.
well, I think that clock on the back wall, mine says, yeah. It looks like it's that time. We'd like to welcome everyone here. This is our regular council meeting for the second Monday in December 9th, 2019. If you haven't done so, would you please sign in on the attendance roll? And if you've got a cell phone, please make sure that the ringer is shut off. Also, if you need to have a conversation amongst yourselves, please take that outside of the room because the acoustics are not great. I would just remind everyone, this is a good opportunity to remind the council members and anyone who might come forward to the microphone to speak. Microphone. This is being this meeting will be on Facebook Live. We got a lot of good reports about doing that last time. We also got some complaints that some of us were maybe a little hard to hear. So make sure you remember to speak clearly into the microphone. We're going to start out by having Council Member Thomas pray for us and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we gather before Thee tonight as citizens of Preston, Idaho. And first and foremost, we want to express to Thee the utmost gratitude for the privilege we have and the blessings we experience by living here in this time. We appreciate the safety that we have. We appreciate those who work tirelessly to ensure that safety and to ensure that our city functions. We're grateful for their hard work and pray for their safety every day, especially with winter inclement weather and road conditions, that they will return home safely to their families each and every day. We're grateful for our own families that support us as a mayor and council with the time and the stress and the things that require us to be away from home. We pray for thy inspiration, for thy guidance, that decisions made will benefit the city as a whole and not bring harm to any individuals. We again appreciate the opportunity for an open government, a representative government, and pray that we will not ever lose that privilege in this country. These favors and blessings we say and ask for and express gratitude for, in the name of thy Son, and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Has everyone, oh, sorry, I about skipped over this. Does anyone have a declaration of a conflict on any of the agenda items?
I have none.
None noted. I did fail to mention, too, that let the record reflect that all council members are present. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the consent calendar? And if so, is there any questions, or is someone prepared to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the consent calendar to include council minutes from November 25th, 2019, bills through December 9, 2019, and the treasurer's monthly report through November 30th of 2019.
Been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. We'd like to invite Chief McCammon and Officer Tyler Wilson to come forward, or at least soon-to-be Officer Tyler Wilson. We're glad to have him on board to fill our ranks and to finish out our department. We're glad to see the great show of support here for law enforcement and for Tyler himself. Repeat after me. I, Tyler Michael Wilson,
I, Tyler Michael Wilson,
do swear to uphold all laws and ordinances
do swear to uphold all laws and ordinances
of the city of Preston
of the city of Preston
and the state of Idaho.
and the state of Idaho.
I swear to uphold the constitutions of the United States of America
I swear to uphold the constitutions of the United States of America
and the state of Idaho,
and the state of Idaho,
and pledge to protect the citizens
and pledge to protect the citizens
of the city of Preston.
of the city of Preston.
I will hold myself accountable
I will hold myself accountable
to the law enforcement code of ethics
to the law enforcement code of ethics
and discharge my duties as a police officer
and discharge my duties as a police
for the Preston City Police Department
for the Preston City Police Department
to the best of my judgment and abilities.
to the best of my judgment and abilities.
I won't hold it against you, Tyler. I won't hold it against you who your father-in-law is.
Thank you, Officer Wilson and Chief McCammon, and thanks to all those who came to support.
I just know him from elsewhere.
Have you got a little meet and greet? Yeah, it looks like you got a little meet and greet in the police department.
Well, there goes our audience.
What's that?
My girlfriend's dead.
Are they?
I don't know. I doubt it.
Last time they had sushi.
I know. I love sushi. That did clear the room. But it's sure nice to have the room. when we need it. All right, moving on to number 4, amend building permit. We'll have Sean come up and present that.
We had the public hearing at our last meeting, and in doing that, we discovered that the swell code was going to be a problem if we changed that, which I believe those changes are going through here shortly. And so what we've done is we've gone through and we've amended this new building permit code so that instead of specifying out that grass sod has to be in a swell, it will just reflect that it has to be, the swell has to be in conformance to section 16.25.060R, which is the swell specifications, so that when those are changed, we'll still be in, they'll still be congruent with one another.
Thank you. Any questions from the council members? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to have the clerk present that ordinance.
Get to do that. I'll make a motion then that we introduce the ordinance 2019-09, dispense with the rules requiring the reading of this on 3 consecutive days, and ask our very kind city clerk, Linda Aycock, to read it in summary.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Larson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wall?
Aye.
Councilmember Wadsworth?
Aye.
Thank you. Linda, will you summarize that for the...
The City of Preston, Idaho, amending the building permit codes. Chapter 17.28 of the Preston Municipal Code as follows. 17.28020, content of application. Includes certification from applicant that content of application is true and that applicant has read and understands application in Preston Municipal Code relating to construction, zoning, and applicable codes requiring site plans, amending survey requirements. 17.28030, approval of building permit, amending building permit completion, allowing permit administrator to approve, disapprove building permits, city clerk's office to issue placard. 17.28.065, required improvements to be installed prior to permit issuance. Dedication of streets on major street plan, require asphalt, require ribbon, curb, and swell, require legal access to existing parcels, connect to city water system, connect to city sewer system, owner of property to pay all costs for water and sewer connections, swell bond refund to be requested within 1 year or forfeited to the city sidewalk fund, properties outside of 4th North, 4th East, 6th South, and 4th West prior to occupancy permit shall dedicate streets, lay asphalt, construct ribbon curb and swell, vertical curb along existing streets, or pay into city sidewalk fund, show legal access, connect to city water system, connect to city sewer system, owner of property to pay all costs for water and sewer connections, engineer or surveyor shall calculate proper grade for sewer lines, curb, gutter, and sidewalk, require a certificate of completion from city engineer. All improvements of the final subdivision plat shall be complete before the issuance of a building permit. All annexation fees shall be paid before the issuance of a building permit. Repair to any damage. City improvements caused by construction shall be made before the issuance of a building permit. No building materials, equipment trailers may be stored in the public right-of-way, live sod and swell within 7 months of occupancy and kept free of debris. Not to compromise, sod or construction of swell bond refund to be requested within 1 year or forfeited to the city sidewalk fund, allowing any parcel exceeding the minimum required area at least twice the requirement to delay required improvements on undeveloped portion until developed, allowing city staff to review application to ensure city services can be delivered to proposed building site. 17.28.080, penalties non-inclusive listing of fees to be paid before occupancy is granted. No further permit shall be granted if applicant has outstanding fees on other permit. No connection to city water or sewer until all fees have been paid, allowing for the removal of building if violation occurs, $5 of $500 per day, each day of violation. No city water until all fees are paid. Suspension of city business license if violation occurs, allowing for a lien upon property for unpaid fees and fines. 17.28.100 appeals process. City staff will not issue building permit and notify applicant if the building does not meet code requirements, zoning code requirements, or city services cannot be provided, allowing applicant to appeal denied building permit to the Planning and Zoning Commission if requested within 14 days, allowing a denial by Planning and Zoning to be appealed to Preston City Council if requested within 14 days, allow publication by summary, dispense with reading on 3 separate days, and establish an effective date.
Thank you, Linda. Well done. Would open it up for discussion by the council or entertain a motion.
I just have one easy question. We use the term permit administrator. I assume that's our engineer.
I think that's actually Sean.
Okay,
Tyrell had both review permits and then Randy reviewed the plans,
okay.
but I administered all future paperwork and not
Okay, that was just wondering who that referred to specifically. So that answers my question.
Any other questions, comments? Terry?
Comment, go ahead. In going over the ordinance, looking at a few different things, under section 17.28.65, the heading of that is required improvements to be installed prior to permit issuance. And then about where it says down about five lines, it says that prior to obtaining the occupancy permit, you must meet the following requirements. So on the heading of 17.28.65, when it refers to permit issuance, is that a building permit issuance, or is that occupancy? What is it for sure? It looks to me like if it's referred to as an occupancy permit, then it would allow for improvements to be made prior to construction. If it's for a building permit, if it states as a building permit, then the things such as curb and gutter, written curb, or sidewalks would have to be installed before the permit issuance and before the beginning of construction. And so I still have I personally have issues with needing those improvements done prior to the beginning of construction, just with the possible cause of damage by equipment, track hose, et cetera, going over green cement that's in place. And then under section 8 and 9, it talks about the extension of public sanitary sewer and water lines. If a person building has to extend public sewer and water lines in order to tie into them, that it's at the owner's expense. But if those are public extensions, do we need to have verbiage in there that after that's done, that they dedicate the ownership of those lines to the city? The people installing that would be protected from their investment in those lines through section 1352 of the municipal code and the 10 years of required buy-in. But that's just my question. Do we need to include any verbiage in there that those utilities are dedicated, that they're turned over to the city? And that's in both the inner core and outer core, in both sections.
Somebody from staff want to respond to those questions? Looks like Lyle's going to.
Questions or comments on those in terms of dedicating those lines, I think that would be part of the plat process, if there is a plat. I guess I'm looking at Tyrell to see if that would be the case. If we're just talking about a home, though, where there isn't a plat, maybe that would be something that would be good to do. I don't think the homeowner is going to want to try to own those and maintain them. I think they'd be more than happy to turn them over to the city, but whether it needs to be done as part of the building permit ordinance or not, I don't know. That's a good question.
Tyrell, did you have some comment?
Any reference to the heading on 1720-2065 as far as wording, it seems like it would allow for interpretation of when those improvements need to be done.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is the building permit could be issued without those improvements being done?
Without the improvements being done, the permit could be issued, but occupancy would not be granted until those.
And that's how I've always understood it.
But the way it's worded is one thing says it's before a building permit will be issued, that the improvements have to be done, and in the very first paragraph it says for occupancy. So my question is, I think that leaves it open to interpretation of when those improvements must be done.
I agree, because if you look, I mean, you're not going to connect to the sewer and you're not going to connect to the water before you build your house.
Right. Or do the sidewalk.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, you can't connect to the sewer until you've got a house, a structure there with sewer lines running to the service line.
Well, what we're trying to prevent, I think, is occupancy permit being issued without the improvements being finished.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So it gets back to the title, required improvements to be installed prior to permit issuance. Should that say required improvements to be installed prior to
Does
occupancy?
it need to be more specific
Sean, have you got some thoughts?
to add that word?
I guess if you're more specific, I would again defer to Lyle.
I mean, we could just end the sentence of that title after the word installed, required improvements to be installed. I don't know, I mean, headings are generally not deemed to be part of the body of the ordinance anyways. They're for the reader's convenience more so than being something that has the effect of law. But if it would make it more clear to either add in the word occupancy or just end that after the word installed, I think either one of those would probably work.
And then also, I just still, I'm not in favor of the sidewalk bond being tied to the building permit, personally.
You know, you're going to have cases where, like in a major subdivision, where before final plat is approved and they can start selling lots, those improvements have to be installed. So in major subdivisions, you're going to have sidewalks existing everywhere prior to any building permits being.
And I agree with that, and I realize that too. But in a subdivision like that, I think you're not dealing with green cement. Those improvements will have been there most likely for quite some time,
yeah.
maybe months, possibly years before somebody moves in. So the soundness of the cement at that point, I believe, is like we discussed last meeting. Most of the time, they just put a load of dirt over the top of the sidewalks or whatever to keep from damaging them. But as we kind of, I believe I'll know, if you have a new driveway or something poured, you don't drive on it for 2 to 3 weeks until the cure of the cement's complete.
Yeah.
And so if when building a new home, if you adhered to the general rules of allowing concrete to cure, that's going to throw your schedule off by 2 to 3 weeks.
That's a good point.
That's all I
Have you-
have, Mayor.
Okay, are you prepared to make a motion for some verbiage changes you'd like to see?
I don't necessarily need the verbiage changes if, according to council, the headings aren't considered to be part of the body of the document. I would then read it as those, I personally would read it as those improvements can be done after building permit issuance, but before occupancy.
Yeah.
That's how I,
In that paragraph A, you know, it does say, prior to obtaining an occupancy permit, meet the following requirements. I see where you're coming from. The title kind of conflicts, or potentially conflicts with the very next paragraph, perhaps. So maybe just removing that language prior to permit issuance, just required improvements. Maybe it should even just be required improvements as a title.
Right, that would work also. Sure.
Yeah.
You'd be comfortable with that?
Yeah.
You'd be comfortable with that, Lyle?
Yes. And just a comment on verbiage on the summary with the change that was approved tonight, and I've marked it on my copy that Linda can maybe see. It's, I don't know how many lines down, about 2/3 of the way down, it says live sawed-in swale. We probably ought to just change that to say applicant to comply with PMC section 1625-060R regarding drainage swales. And that'll make the summary match with.
That addresses a couple of issues, one of which you brought up, Terry. The other one would be
The conflict with the swale ordinance, right?
The new verbiage handles the conflict that we had last time, where it just refers us to it doesn't have the verbiage of the swell ordinance or in with it just refers to that particular code.
Yeah. Rather than try to outline what that swale has to consist of in this summary. Yeah.
What, in your opinion, would be the best recommendation, or what's your recommendation for moving forward, addressing those issues and coming back to this point at the next council meeting, or making a motion that included those corrections to the ordinance and moving forward?
I think procedurally you could make a motion to include those corrections in order to be moved forward from there. I don't think it needs to come back for a public hearing, or unless you want to, back for a public hearing.
We don't want to kill another.
Make Linda read that.
Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2019-09. Is that all I need to say?
You need to make the changes.
With the verbiage changes as advised by council to council.
Been moved. Do we have a second? What's that?
I said that's pretty vague, but I'll second it.
Okay.
You making fun of my motion?
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Larson?
Nay.
Councilmember Wall?
Aye.
Councilmember Wadsworth?
Aye.
All right, thanks for all your hard work, Sean. Appreciate that. Moving on to new business. Commissioner Swainston?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor, unless you have questions.
Any questions from the council?
Allison was there this morning, so was there anything?
Thanks for being here. All right, business licenses. Is anybody prepared to make a motion? Do you want to take them up separately? Do you want to make a motion for the bunch? I'll just open it up for discussion.
I didn't see any conflicts in any of the businesses that I personally thought would merit discussion. If anybody else does. If not, I would make a motion that we approve business licenses for David Larson in the Hearing Centers of America, Stockton Gunnell for D.A. Davidson, Samuel and Sinead Boucher with iWaves Research, and Michelle Furness with Ray's Bake Shop and Cafe.
Been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, the next item would be taking into consideration canceling the December 23rd City Council meeting. We're not aware, staff is not aware, nor am I, of anything pressing that would require that meeting. Any concerns from the council? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we cancel the December 23rd, 2019 meeting.
Been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. Moving on to D, wastewater facility plan study update. And we welcome Keller and Associates.
Presentation up and going. Mayor, Council, once Mayor gets back. Thanks for having us today. I am Coulter Hollingshead with Keller Associates. Here today also have Jim Mullen with Keller Associates and Jared Richens with Keller Associates. They've all been working on the study. We'll wait for the mayor to get back before we dive in here.
Go in there and sneak some food. Bring it back in.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. The reason we're here today, we kind of wanted to give you guys an update on the wastewater facility planning study. As you remember, we started it probably about 9-10 months ago, last fall, last winter, I actually guess about a year ago. We've been going through, working with city staff for the last year. Just wanted to give the mayor and council an update of where we stand as of today. So I want to keep this open forum. If any questions arise, feel free to stop us and we can discuss them. I want to try to keep this short as we can, probably within 15 minutes is what I'm shooting for here. But once again, feel free to ask questions as we go through. A lot of information in here. I'm just going to try to hit some of the high points today. So these are a few of the presentation topics that we'll be covering. So kind of going back, why did this all come up with to begin? The city of Preston received a compliance schedule from US EPA as part of the latest discharge permit that the city received for the wastewater treatment plant. And this schedule that you see before you is what the schedule that was handed down by US EPA for the city to meet. And so what we're working on right now is the wastewater facility planning study, which is what the presentation is primarily on today. And this study is due by May 1st of 2020. We're on schedule to meet that. We're actually a couple months ahead of that study, depending how a few things work out. But we should be good to go on that. As you can see there, the next 5 years is really when the permit needs to be in place by and be achieving the results. So in 2021, there's a preliminary engineering report that needs to be submitted. 2022 is when final plans and specifications get submitted to DEQ and EPA for any improvements in the wastewater collection system or at the wastewater treatment plant. May 1st of 2023 is when construction on any new improvements would be in place. May 1st of 2025 is when construction would need to be complete with any new wastewater improvements. And then, like I mentioned, November 1st of 2025 is the compliance schedule for actually having the wastewater meet the permit requirements. So that's kind of the driving timeline behind this entire study and process. Next slide here is study progress, where we've been and where we're going. So to date, we've identified the preliminary deficiencies within the wastewater system. Over the past 10-12 months, we've been doing a lot of flow monitoring throughout the city, which is essentially putting flow monitors down into the collection system to determine how flows are going during storm events, during high spring runoffs, and just throughout the day and throughout the year. So we monitored through 5 or 6 different flow meters for approximately 5 months, and for the last 5 or 6 months we've just been monitoring down to the wastewater treatment plant. What this does is kind of gives us an idea of where all the flows are coming from in the city, and some different options we can look at having that information. So we've gotten a lot of good information from that. Design points are being defined for incoming wastewater strengths and flows. So we have a good idea now of what the strength of the wastewater is coming into the treatment plant, which for any sort of alternatives we need to know to be able to design for that. Potential layouts down at the treatment plant are being evaluated for sizing purposes, and we're moving forward on preliminary cost estimates and also funding options as we look at different alternatives down at the treatment plant and in the collection system. Quickly here, a summary of collection deficiencies, widespread sewer collection system concerns. A lot of it, the city has done preliminary CCTV investigations, which is essentially putting cameras down your sewer pipes to see what kind of condition the sewer pipes are in. We've reviewed all those videos. The next slide here will show a map of kind of looking at, the good sections of the collection system piping versus the ones that are in need of some upgrades. One of the larger things we found is significant inflow and infiltration causing overflows at the treatment plant. So if you remember, about a month and a half ago, there was a large rainstorm event. It rained about 2 inches in a day. We're able to get good flow monitoring from that sort of event and kind of seeing how the system reacted to that. So we've been able to collect a lot of good data to start to analyze some different options here in the future for the city of Preston in the wastewater. Here is a brief summary of kind of what the flows have looked like down at the treatment plant over the last, I believe it's over the last 3 years. The last 8 months in this one. So as you can see there at the beginning of the graph, on the left-hand side, that is the flow at the treatment plant in million gallons per day. The bottom is the months and the days. So you can see in the early spring, flows are typically around 1 million gallons. But then when snow melt hits, lots of runoff in the fields, things like that, the flows at the treatment plant jump up to around 2 million gallons a day. And then throughout the summer and fall, they drop back down to around 500,000 to 1 million gallons a day. You can see some of these large peaks here happening around April of 2019. You can see the spike here, that's around 5 or 6 million gallons a day. Essentially what that was is there was a lot of snow melt, rain on top of snow, and that created some large influent flows down at the wastewater treatment plant. So this is all information we need to look at different alternatives, and we've been able to gather that information over the last 7 or 8 months.
Was this other spike that rain event?
So this was that September 29th through October 1st, so I think it was very beginning of October when that rain event occurred. So you can see it peaked flows up to over 3 million gallons. So the system here in Preston does have a little bit more infiltration and inflow issues than maybe some other cities in eastern Idaho. Typically we'll definitely see an increase, but the amount of increase that we're seeing here in Preston is quite a bit, which means there's a lot of inflow directly from stormwater, whether it's through manhole lids, whether it's some direct connections into the sewer system. It's just a multitude of different things coming together that ends up having a lot of your stormwater end up down at your wastewater treatment plant that ends up having to need to be treated because it gets mixed with the wastewater. As soon as stormwater gets mixed with wastewater, it needs to be treated, such as it is all wastewater. So it's definitely a big factor in our considerations.
And any facility built would need to either handle the maximum, or the city needs to take care of the infill that's coming in.
Right, so there's kind of two ways to approach it. One way is treating it down at the treatment plant, whether you're storing a portion of it on those max days and then treating the rest, or trying to determine areas within the city that those inflows are occurring at. Like I mentioned, this map here on the collection system shows the condition of the sewer system throughout the city. Some of these here that are not rated didn't have camera inspections performed on them yet. The ones that are blue are in the best condition. The ones that are in red are in the worst condition. So you can see it kind of varies throughout the city. Some of the areas that are poor versus the areas that are good. These red ones are the worst. These blue areas are the best. So kind of some of these new areas out here on the north end, some of the newer subdivisions, which is what you'd expect to have better sewer piping.
Now, this map you're playing is talking about the quality of the collection.
Yes.
Earlier you mentioned some design points. What part of town would be the highest flow? In other words, what part of town is taxing the system the most?
Right, so we looked at that. So we ended up setting up 5 to 6 flow monitors around the city, one up here on the north side. There was one here kind of by the high school. There was one down here by Worm Creek, one down here on the south side, and one over here on the west side. So we kind of captured everything within the city, the main arteries, and really kind of everywhere within the system there were peaks when it rained. So that tells us that there's a little bit of infiltration kind of throughout the system. There were some areas that did have higher concentrations, but it wasn't just one area that had all of the inflow. Kind of the worst area of what it appeared is kind of the Old Town Worm Creek area down here kind of by the school, and in this area, which by reports given to us wasn't that big of a surprise because of some of the really old infrastructure there and things that were done with stormwater in the past and some of the potential interties there. So that is definitely one area to look at, but like I said, there's definitely some infiltration and inflow in various areas throughout the city. So that's kind of a brief synopsis on the collection system. Now down at the treatment plant. Down at the treatment plant, a lot of the facilities down there over 30, getting close to 40 years old. A lot of those updates were made in the 70s, some in the 80s. So some of them reached the end of their useful life. Justin and Doug are dealing with stuff down there every day on different things, trying to fix them and keep them going. Treatment plant's undersized to handle those springtime flows and large storm events. The existing treatment plant is sized for 1 million gallons per day. And if you kind of go back and look at that chart of flows we're actually seeing, oftentimes we have flows over 1 million gallons a day. Some days up to around 5 million gallons a day on average on those really peak days. So that's definitely something to take into consideration, and we have. The treatment plant will not meet EPA DEQ required effluent limits in current condition. So one of these next slides here is really the driver behind everything, which was the new permit requirement, which is for phosphorus. So the current plant is unable to meet that as it sets right now. So an idea, if anyone's not familiar. Now it's a single oxidation ditch and single boat clarifier. So what happens is all the wastewater from the city comes into the treatment plant, into the headworks building, which is just right there. It then flows from the headworks building into the oxidation ditch. Then from the oxidation ditch, which is where all of our biological treatment occurs, it flows into this boat clarifier, which sets within the oxidation ditch, flows in the back end of the clarifier, and then out the front end. It's really what that clarifier is doing, is settling all the solids to the bottom, and the clean water goes out the top of the clarifier. And then from the clarifier, when it goes from there, it goes through and into the UV and solids handling building. The last disinfection process happens here, goes through UV, and then deposits and discharges into Worm Creek, then which eventually flows into the Bear River. So that's really how the system works right now. And so that is an oxidation ditch. One of the biggest concerns here with the treatment plant, which the operators have ran into, is redundancy. There's only one oxidation ditch, only one clarifier. We can never take the oxidation ditch down. We can never take the clarifier down to clean it or do anything with it. So the last few years, there's been some sludge pumping and things like that that kind of have to occur because of there only being one ditch right now. So that's
Which I might just let the public know that's cost us pretty close to $100,000 thus far.
in the last 2 years, right? So this is really the driver behind that initiated the entire study, is the phosphorus requirement. So the phosphorus requirement is set from EPA, and what this is in the original permit issued probably 15 years ago, there wasn't a phosphorus requirement. In this latest permit issued in 2016-2017, there is a phosphorus requirement, and that's what initiated the entire compliance schedule. So as you can see here, what we're showing in this graph here is over the last 3 years what the phosphorus has been on the effluent from the treatment plant, and this is in pounds of phosphorus per day. But you can see it's been right around 10 pounds per day. On some of those flow peaks, it's been up around 30, 40 pounds per day, but kind of averaging around 10. And the dashed lines here at the bottom are what the future requirements are for phosphorus for weekly and monthly. As you can see, they are much, much lower than where the treatment plant currently is, and that's one of the big driving factors for this study.
Is it realistic to get it down that low?
It is. There's different treatment technologies that we're looking at and have used successfully in the past to be able to get phosphorus limits that low. It is a very low requirement, and we've been talking with DEQ and EPA about the requirement, seeing if there's anything we can do with it. So obviously we're exploring those avenues. But what is required, we've been talking with manufacturers here over the last month of different equipment, and they're saying that their equipment can get it down to there. We know there are various types of equipment that can definitely get it down to there, but there's a cost associated with that. So we're looking for the lowest cost possible and still meeting the permit effectively is what we're shooting for.
Where is that phosphorus measurement obtained? Is it out of the river? Is it out of the creek? So it's taking into consideration the natural phosphorus that's happening in there that.
So this is.
We have to overtreat. I guess what I'm saying is, do we have to overtreat our water? So we're practically putting drinking water back in the creek to average the natural phosphorus.
Right. So all these measurements that EPA and DEQ look at are coming out of the effluent of your wastewater treatment plant. So it's right at the plant before it goes into the creek.
So we're not getting penalized.
Right. It's
right.
It's exactly what you guys are putting out at the treatment plant.
All right. Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just while you're on that graph, would you, I guess, that peak that we see there in the summer, would you consider that's from like lawn fertilization that's at that point?
So what this is, if you remember, this is December 2016, January, March. So spring of 2017, if you remember, there's extremely kind of a rare event here. There's a lot of big snowpack, rain, and down at the treatment plant, they had extremely high flows for about a week or two straight. And so these high phosphoruses are going with those flows. So there's probably lots of runoff from fields and everything else happening, dumping into the collection system that was really peaking those phosphorus loadings.
So we wouldn't necessarily think that we could attribute that then at all to just normal fertilization of lawns and stuff. Then it's more
probably not, unless there was stuff running off in the springtime from those lawns and then somehow getting into the sewer collection system. So. But the idea is with any new treatment plant to try to still maintain below there with the treatment technology. So that kind of gets us into different alternatives that we began looking at. The alternatives here, we're looking at kind of the tried and true technologies that we oftentimes look at for wastewater treatment plants. these are kind of the four we narrowed it down to after doing some preliminary evaluations. One of the things we had to look at is balancing equalization and treatment costs. You know, like we said, we have those extremely high peaks on those days where we get 5 or 6 million gallons. Well, there's no reason to necessarily do a 6 million gallon treatment plant if we can have an equalization basin along with the treatment plant. So really what that is, if you kind of think about it, if you have a day where you have a 6 million gallon flow going into the treatment plant, if you do like a 3 million gallon treatment, 3 million gallon equalization, essentially half the flow goes through your treatment plant, gets discharged into the creek. The other half is going into a lagoon or a storage containment area and is just being stored there until flows drop back down below the design level and then can be pumped back in and treated. So it's really just kind of a storage area for your wastewater to get through the event.
That would basically triple our capacity.
From what it is right now, yes, yes. And then, you know, the other component that I really didn't talk about much is looking at future growth. That's also factored into there. For these facility planning studies, we're looking at growth 10 to 20 years out, or sorry, 20 to 40 years out. So that's factored into kind of some of the design numbers we're looking at. So the treatment technologies we looked at, oxidation ditch, which is what you guys currently have right now as far as the treatment technology. So that treatment technology for the primary flow is just fine. What we do is on the back end put a filtration system on to take care of the phosphorus. MBR, which is a membrane bioreactor, has the highest effluent quality, small footprint, high cost. SBR, you can read down through those. But essentially, if you look at this graph here, what we did is we tried to optimize what design flow would be at the lowest cost alternative. And really the lowest cost out of these four ends up being an oxidation ditch. So that's really the alternative we'll talk about a little bit more in depth here as we move forward. So we've met with some city staff over the last several months, several times, and started to discuss some preliminary layouts. These are just looking at three kind of different alternatives, doing that combination between the equalization and the design of the treatment plant. So the first alternative there is looking at a 2.5 million gallon oxidation ditch with a 6 million gallon equalization lagoon, where alternative 3 is looking at a 3 million gallon oxidation ditch with a 3 million gallon equalization basin. So there's a lot of different combinations you can do between the two. A lot of times we'll look at land, how much land it's going to take, along with the most effective design balance of those two.
What is your difference between lagoon and basin?
So what this is this would be actually a big lagoon out in the field, essentially, that's lined with HDPE. It would take up a lot more space. It's only going to be probably 7-8 feet deep. It's much larger, but it's not concrete, where these two over here are more likely going to be concrete basins that are actually holding the water rather than an HDPE lined lagoon.
What do you see in Franklin?
Those are lagoons that you see out there. Yep. So those great big ponds where you really don't see walls or anything like that, those are typically lagoons. Yep. They have some benefits and consequences associated with both types of technology. So here's a couple of layouts. We actually have 3 layouts here to kind of just show you how they may actually lay out in the nearby vicinity. So what we're looking at here with the 2.5 MGD, 6 MGD lagoon, a couple of oxidation ditches, a couple of clarifiers. You notice the clarifiers are outside of the ditch, so you can take them offline and not be confined. We also have redundancy, so we can take one ditch offline or one clarifier offline and be able to provide maintenance on the facilities. New headworks building. You see this big equalization lagoon out here to the north, and then disinfection filtration facilities here on the back end. This is where the phosphorus would be taken care of in this particular setup.
Well, where you're showing that equalization lagoon, that's a slope.
Right, and so there would have to be quite a bit of earthwork right here.
As well as we don't own that ground.
Yep. Yep, so these are just very preliminary right now. We're still looking at just options to kind of look, okay, if the city did look at getting any ground, then this may be kind of the area to look at. There are obviously multiple different options throughout. There's you can kind of purchase land wherever nearby. There's just some costs associated with pumping it if you need to versus not pumping it. So there's some different things to consider there. This next one here is the 4.5 MGD plant with a smaller equalization basin. This is looking at utilizing the existing oxidation ditch as an equalization basin, trying to utilize as much infrastructure as we can at the existing treatment plant, and then having the oxidation ditches and clarifiers on the other side. So kind of just looking at spacing there. Versus the last option here, which is kind of putting everything on the other side of the creek with equalization basins and ditches and clarifiers. So really just giving some potential layouts on these ones. So that gets us through kind of some different options we're preliminarily looking at as part of this study, and gets us into really the heart of it is funding opportunities for the city. You know, what are some different options that are out there? So typically this is a combination of grants and low interest loans. Funding agencies consider demographics and user rates. Typical statewide user rates for sewer are anywhere from $50 to $55 a month. That's kind of the typical throughout the state. Potential funding sources, Idaho DEQ, that's by far and away probably the largest funding source for these types of projects. They have loan and principal forgiveness, usually 20 or 30-year loans at 1.5% to 3%. USDA RD also has grants and loans, up to a 40-year loan at 2 to 3%. Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, is up to a $500,000 grant. Army Corps of Engineers, grants and loans, those vary year to year. And then also special appropriation grants, so if Congress decides to pass a bill for public infrastructure, sometimes those are dedicated to water and sewer. We're always looking for those to see what's out there and what's available. Here's a previous funding example that we put together for the City of American Falls. A few of your staff members have been to that plant. So that was a plant that was completed back in 2015. American Falls is a little bit smaller than the city of Preston, but kind of gives you an idea. It was a $16.3 million project. They ended up getting 27% grant, 68% loan, 5% city funds up front. So to kind of see a breakdown of what they were able to do, we'd be looking at hopefully something somewhat similar here for Preston, but that'd be once we get into talking with the grant funders, USDA, DEQ, and we've already started talking with them a little bit, so everyone's aware of the city of Preston and upcoming needs. Yep, Lana is here today, so she is up to speed on all the grants and loans that USDA RD has to offer.
And I'm going to guess we're not the only city in Idaho facing this.
No, it is a very common issue for cities at different times over the last 10 to 15 years that have went through this. You know, there's always new permit requirements coming out, whether it's phosphorus, whether it's nitrogen, ammonia, you know, whatever it is. For Preston, it's phosphorus because of the Bear River and the total maximum daily loading on the Bear River that's been evaluated, and that's really what kind of started all this for the city of Preston, because eventually Worm Creek dumps into the Bear River.
Is that phosphorus target, though, that we're going to try to hit stable, or is EPA going to make it dynamic?
No, so it's stable for the duration of the permit. So, you know, no one can ever absolutely guarantee that once a new permit comes up that wouldn't change, but usually once they set a limit, that's where it kind of stays.
And our permit expires when?
2022, 2023. Yeah.
So in theory, the target could change.
Potentially, usually, most of the time that they don't. You know, EPA is transferring primacy to DEQ here in the state of Idaho. You know, and we've been talking with DEQ and EPA actually both in the last several weeks. They're very well aware of this. We're looking at the phosphorus limit. It doesn't sound like it's going to change, but that is definitely something we're staying on top of.
Project there for just one little thing. I'm also on the Bear River Advisory Group for the DEQ, and most of the cities that were in the same situation that we're in, they give relief to on their permitting, and they said absolutely Preston is the worst of the worst, and they will not budge on the original permitting for Preston. So some of the other places actually had the opportunity to downscale their projects, because after the permitting came out, they, through appeals and stuff, got their permits reduced. And because of the condition of the water in Worm Creek ahead of us, they said it's absolutely a horrid waterway and upstream, and they said that they would not entertain any thoughts of reducing our permitting.
Okay.
Thanks, I think.
So we are
I
being
tried.
penalized for
Yes.
phosphorus that
Yes.
already exists, basically.
Yes.
Comes
At the
in
end of the day.
naturally.
Yes.
Right. You know, the easiest people to target are point sources, which cities and wastewater treatment plants are point sources. So kind of preliminary project schedule here, looking ahead. I won't go through every single one of these, but we're developing the wastewater advisory group with Tyrell. We'll be looking to get that done here this month and be starting to submit for preliminary funding through DEQ, and really hoping to wrap up the study in February, March. So I'm sure we'll be back here a few times between now and then, and working with the city moving forward and kind of nailing down an alternative to proceed forward with to wrap up the study and get it completed.
Thank you. Any other questions for?
No, thank you. That was a great presentation.
I have just one question, and I'm trying to recall from memory, so if my memory serves me wrong, feel free to correct me, because it happens. But it runs in my mind when we originally started down this road, that, and when we were evaluating and scoring all of the applicants who wanted the opportunity to build our wastewater treatment plant, it seems like everybody that came in, we was looking more at I would say the 16 to $18 million range, and actually an MBR was where we was looking at the 30 million plus, and now I see our cheapest alternative is $4 to $5 million higher than that. Do I recall that correctly? And if so, why the big jump?
Right. I'm not exactly sure the 16 to 18. I can't necessarily verify that. But over the last 4 to 5, or I'd say probably over the last year to two, construction prices have went up. So that's going to be a portion of it. And then also, really the flows that we have here at the treatment plant have made it a little bit larger than we expected. Originally, we were expecting maybe a 1.5 to 2 MGD plant. Now we're looking at a 3 MGD plant because of the flows that are being experienced.
So originally, we believed that the plant that was put in American Falls would serve us equally.
Right. It'd be
And
somewhat
we
close.
found that that's,
It'll be a little short.
and that's not the case.
Right.
Part of that is we put in several flow meters, as Colton mentioned, and we're able to dial in what the flows are actually. So the flow meter at the plant, so it can only go up to 1 million gallons a day. So now we're seeing flows of 4 or 5 million gallons a day, that's a lot higher.
The cost you've got listed here, is there any way that includes having to probably purchase some land?
Yep.
It does?
It does
Just an
include some
estimate?
contingencies in there
Yeah.
for that. So what we're trying to provide is overall cost for everything for the project.
And the poor condition of our sewer system overall
Right, that's
is
a
a huge
factor in it
factor.
too. Yep.
It's a huge factor.
So there's definitely been some.
It needs to be addressed in the future as well, along with the plan, because it's not going to get any better. So.
So this plan doesn't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
This plan doesn't, it just addresses the flow, it addresses what we're getting down there at the plant. It doesn't address how can we segregate how can we take out some of the unnecessary flow and put it directly back into Worm Creek, it doesn't consider that, is that correct?
Right, so we are looking at, you know, the worst areas of the sewer collection system. So what we'll do is we'll go through and rate all those, and the worst areas where we expect the highest infiltration, we'll break that off into a piece of potential collection improvements that could potentially help bring down that peak. So that'll be part of the study as we finalize, get close to finalizing the study. Yep.
And the great part about that, along with the studies that they're doing, the knowledge of our current public works employees is great in knowing where some of those trouble points are. So that'll be helpful, the knowledge that they have of where some of those problems are.
Anything else?
Thank you, I think.
All right. Thank you guys for your time today.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Same to you guys.
All right, moving on to E. Sean, I'll welcome you up to the podium once again.
So what we're presenting to you is, I guess, the culmination of a process we've gone through. Previously, you've signed a preliminary approval letter on incentives for each of these companies, and basically what we're doing is we're formalizing those preliminary agreements into actual agreements today. I've had Lyle help me get a good agreement in place and put together, and he's looked over that. So what we need to do today then is first agree to sign it, and then we'll need to put in in the first paragraph, fill in the dates, and then at the top of page 2, we'll need to discuss with the owners or the people who are leading these projects when they would like that to start, and get that figured out. So I would like to invite Mr. Wood up here with me, but before I do that, do you guys have any questions concerning his project?
Terry?
I don't have questions concerning these projects.
Thank you.
But I had the opportunity this morning to meet with Scott Egbert from Pizza Villa and Mike Nicholas from New York Deli, and then I met with Ron and Gail Bracken with Pizza Stop. And what I'm seeing is concerns that as a city we're picking winners and losers, that we've created a situation where we're subsidizing entities to come in that are in direct competition with businesses that have existed for 20 to 30 years in our town and contributed a lot to our community. And they would like to see some revisions to our incentive program, and possibly, if need be, even possibly doing away with it. That being said, I also, in the conversation with them, I will say that it was a good conversation, and I appreciated those individuals taking time this morning to meet with me. But they feel that they can compete with anybody that comes in if they're on an equal playing field. But they feel this tips the playing field out of their hands, and that the jobs created will not create new jobs. They'll simply shuffle jobs around town. That being said, I also discussed with them that Woodland Enterprises, Domino's Pizza, in essence, has met the criteria of the incentive program the way it's written, and I don't believe a reason why we should not approve the Domino's Pizza incentive package based on the document that we have in front of us right now has been met.
Thank you. Would you like to respond at all, or?
Well, I don't know that I can say anything that hasn't already been thought of. I know that when we initiated this process of doing incentives, the idea was to bring in business, period. Along with that, in discussions with Brad, as we were getting this formalized and written up as far as the ordinance itself, we did discuss whether we should restrict that ordinance to just industrial users, manufacturers, those types of people, and cut out retail, restaurants. The thought was, and what I continually hear, is our downtown is dead. We know we have a problem in our downtown. We know we have a lot of vacancies up there. And with that, if we were to restrict it to manufacturers only, it's not going to have an effect where we necessarily desire it for our downtown to be vibrant again. So that was one issue as far as why we left it the way we did. Second issue, our incentives are not large incentives. They're not. If $5,000 is going to tip the playing field, I don't know what to tell you, because that's what it amounts to per year, is about $5,000. I wish these incentives would have existed when a lot of these businesses were coming in, because I do support the businesses that we have in town. It would be nice if we had them, these incentives in place, we could give them to them, but unfortunately at that time, for whatever reason, we didn't. Those businesses that have been established, they have enjoyed success in our town and in our county, and they've been able to benefit from being here for years. They're established. People know them, and I think that's going to be continued. I don't see that going to be a problem. If competition's the issue, I don't know what to say to that. That's kind of what our society is. In capitalism, we have competition. And that's going to be the bottom line. As new things progress, there's going to be competition. Where that goes, I don't know.
And might I say, in the conversations that I had with them, they are not against competition. They actually actively encouraged competition. It was competition on a level playing field is what they're after. Not one of them stated that they felt like that competition wasn't welcome. In fact, actually one of them told me he believed that competition was actually a good thing. So,
well, that leaves me hopeful. But that being said, I mean, the ball's in your playing court. It's in your field. We put this incentive in place. I didn't hear anybody disagreeing with it when we had the hearings to put it in place. We had the preliminary approval letters. I didn't hear any of those problems then. We're hearing stuff now as we're just about to cross the finish line. So it's up to you really to make that decision. If this is something we're going to do, we need to proceed with it and get on with it. If it's not something we're going to do, then I guess we need to change course, but I guess that's a decision that you all need to make as our elected officials, not me necessarily.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment on this one in particular. You know, as you come into town off of the highway, the very first thing that you really get focused on is that building where Domino's is going to go, and currently it's an eyesore, and that's our gateway. I mean, that's our. If Stokes was on that side of the street, it would be a different story, because that's what you would see, and that is very inviting and very well maintained and taken care of and beautiful. And so here we have a guy that's willing to come in and drop a lot of capital, make some huge improvements on that building, certainly make a more welcoming statement as you come into town with something that's new and bright and appealing. And if we can help that cause by making a small $5,000 incentive per year, I think we would be foolish not to do so. I'm certainly sensitive to the existing businesses in town that built their business without the benefit of incentives, and I'm with Sean. I wish that, you know, that at the time that they came in and established their businesses, that the administrations that had been in office at that time had been thoughtful enough to, you know, to do something similar for them. And so we can't change the past. We can't go back and rewrite that book and offer that now, but we certainly can be forward-looking, and especially as it relates to our downtown area. If we want to entice people and do something to spur on business downtown and refurbishment of those buildings, I think this is a good tool. I mean, it's not a big incentive. It's probably not a make or break incentive, but at least it's us swinging open the door saying, we want you here and we're going to do what we can within our power to get you here. And I think that's important, because the thing that I've heard, and I'm sure that the rest of you have too, is that I've heard it said many times that Preston just hasn't been a business-friendly city. And I don't know if there's truth to that, or if that's more just an urban myth or urban legend, as you might call it. But we're doing something about that, and I'm proud of that work that we've done and that we're doing. And so, therefore, I say let's do it and move on.
Terry, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Brad said there. I did a little bit of research on what the peak usage was for water for Pizza Villa, Big J's, New York Deli, Golden City. It seems like there was one more, but it's slipped. Pizza Stop. I don't know if I said that one or not. So, and Pizza Stop. And what I seen was at the peak usage times that there was only one time that one business went over the 50,000 gallon usage. So most of these businesses are down in, some of them below, a couple of them actually below 10,000. So the incentive package actually gives a maximum of a $5,000 relief on water and sewer rates, which is huge. And if you look at water usage and the current rates at which the businesses are charged, in reality, this incentive package, if it was used to its absolute maximum, would be a value of $26,000. But the reality of it is this is about a $7,500 incentive package over the stretch of 5 years. So based on usage and the rates that we charge. And when you commented on being business friendly, I will actually would like to also say that in the conversations with the Brackens today and Scott and Mike, was they absolutely did not want to also create a hostile environment. That was not their goal at all, because they understand that just what you said is it's been referred to as not a business-friendly town, and they absolutely didn't want the message to be conveyed that they thought that by these actions that they would hate to think that would also turn things around to make us look like a hostile environment.
Well, that's good.
Thank you. Anything from the other council members?
I just wanted to convey to Mike and the Braggins that we had good intentions. And I will take fault on this of looking to the future. We're looking to bring the businesses here. That's why we came up and supported Duchamp. And I still think that this is a good thing. We had good intentions. We just missed that piece of it. And for that, I apologize to you personally for my lack in that knowledge there. I do think maybe we just need to, I agree with what is done, has already been done and needs to move forward, but maybe a little bit more consideration and talk needs to go into it.
Thanks, Allison. Todd, anything you'd like to?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone understands this was in no way an effort of the council to show disloyalty to local business.
That's what I was trying to say.
Never a thought in our head of that, and I understand where your perspective is. If I was in your shoes, I'd probably feel the same way, and I would interpret it the same way. But every one of us have run for office now once or twice. What was probably the most common request people made of you? What are you doing to bring business to Main Street or to town? And I think this was the birth of this idea, was here's one thing we can do, because we are at a big disadvantage to recruit for big things, because we lack freeway access, we lack railroad access. You know, we can't attract some of those big things.
Todd, not to interrupt, but I think that's why we hired an economic developer, was for that very reason.
Because he's smarter than all four of us put together, all five of us. So it was born from that. We were listening to the public, we were responding to the public. And I think it's important to note too that whatever business receives these, tonight we've got 3 different ones. They're different types of businesses. Yeah, with a restaurant business, it very well may be some shuffling of people from one to another and no real net increase. But Mr. Wood is aware that if his business doesn't meet those criteria ongoing, the incentive goes away. So this is no guarantee of benefit in perpetuity. It is short-term and it's dynamic. It will be monitored. The other 2 businesses are a little different type. That we're expecting an influx of jobs and residences, and I don't think this is a program that we should ever scrap. I think it needs to stay open to both industrial and retail, because that's why we did it in response to public demand. So I support the packages, and I still support our local businesses. I may not eat Ron's Pizza as much as I used to, because my doctor says not to. So if you can make a heart-friendly pizza, I'll eat it more. But my point is, this is not disloyalty. It's not a scheme. There is no hidden agenda. It's trying to promote economic stability in Preston. So I'll leave my comments at that.
And I would just say ditto. I don't know how I could say anything better. And obviously, I'm not going to be sitting here in this seat any further, but I hope that this continues, because it is going to make a difference, and everybody will benefit if it continues, and I hope it does so. I believe even the existing businesses will benefit in the future from this, because as PTI brings 30 new jobs to town, there's need for more businesses, not less. And so I would hope that you would continue and stay the course, because I think it's a wonderful thing, and it's going to pay dividends in the future that you just can't even imagine. So, and that's not meaning any.
These individually in motion.
And I would just say, and that's not meaning any disrespect to the existing businesses. Competition is good. Other real estate agents will tell you, even the ones sitting next to me, that if a new real estate agent comes and needs some help, I'm more than happy to give advice and give my best advice and help wherever it is needed. And I think that's healthy, because we work together for the betterment of everyone. So, all right. So yeah. So Sean, we'll invite you back up, and then and then we'll just discuss number 1 here, because we will need to discuss them individually. And I think that the appropriate parties are here in each case.
All right, so as I said, that first paragraph would just need to be filled in for today. On page 2 at the top, that's the big thing, and I'll defer to Wes here as far as when he would like that to start.
That basically talks about commencement, and I wasn't quite sure if you wanted to commence with the construction, or if you're more interested in commencement on opening. And I'm fine with either way. Our plans are hopefully to have building permits Thursday, so I'm fine with that. I'm not, it's not really an issue.
Because you've got 2 kinds of incentive here. You've got a building permit waive of $50, that's kind of applicable at building permit issuance. Your other stuff really wouldn't
That's-
come into
It's more-
effect.
That's business
Business
license.
license is 50.
That's a license, but yeah, building permits, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Building
Yeah,
permits.
my mistake.
Coming into play as soon as possible, since the building permit probably will be after Wednesday.
So commencement makes sense in my mind.
I guess it
Because of
commences, well, I mean, when will you be using water and it be metered and things like that? During construction?
Very little during construction. I mean, a little bit of use of water, but very little.
So I guess that's the date that I'm thinking of, is
You know,
when you
but
turn on the water.
But then we miss the building permit fee
And I
itself,
guess the
which
question
has
is,
to
you know, if
begin.
you're gonna issue a building permit on Thursday,
I think we
should
do.
that be the commencement date? You know, that's probably the easiest thing, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think if we do with opening, if we start with opening, we miss the building permit
And that's,
and the business license, which are both probably, or one's bigger than the water and sewer,
So
so.
are you happy
So the
with
12th, yeah, so the 12th is Thursday, which is hopefully that's when we're gonna get us for building permit. After the planning and zoning meeting, the last approval, so. No, that is fine.
All right. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement governing the award of incentives to Woodland Enterprises doing business as Domino's Pizza, and authorize, is there a signature on here?
Yes. Put a start date. And authorize, yes.
Authorize the signature by the mayor with a start date of December 12th, 2019.
It's been moved. Any further discussions? Well, sorry, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
The next one up, I believe, on the agenda is PTI. Similar thing, we just need that first portion filled out as far as today's date. Following that, on page 2, I'll defer to Calvin. He's here as far as when that would need to actually start for them, so that we can waive their building permit fee and get maximize the benefit for them.
Welcome. Thank you. You maybe pull that mic down a little closer. Sean tends to put it up pretty high. When are you thinking of a start date for your particular agreement? Have you got a date in mind?
We should probably put a start date. There's some other things that we're working on that will cause us to have to break ground in this year. So like hey, give me a Christmas present, 25th of December.
Okay. Any concerns from the council?
You're not gonna break ground before that. You won't be breaking ground before the 25th, but maybe between.
Oh, I wish we were, but no.
But before the end of the year, possibly. Okay. All right.
Any concerns with that? Questions for Calvin? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement governing award of incentives to Production Technologies Incorporated with an effective date of 12/25/2019.
Been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, sir.
you.
Appreciate you.
Can I have just a minute?
Yes.
At this point, now that it's signed, especially the fact that you guys are on Facebook Live today, I want the citizens here to understand what these incentives are about. And for businesses like me, we look for incentives in ways that we can maximize moving to a new location. And without these incentives, we couldn't come here. It would have changed things. And the incentives that we get are a small, small fraction of what we bring. This is where we bring money into this community. The citizens, because of the lack of businesses in Preston, the citizens carry the tax burden. More businesses like mine that come to this town and create jobs, creates a tax base, so that there's someone else to carry some weight of the taxes besides the residents. This isn't a freebie. This isn't something that I'm going to get rich off of. This is something that makes sense for a business to come, and the amount, again, the small fraction that the cities and county and state are offering up to us to give us incentives to come here is very, very, very small compared to the amount of revenue that we're going to bring here, that we're going to pull from other locations, and it's important. So I want to thank everybody for supporting us and moving here.
Well put. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.
This last one is for Spring Up Builders and Doug Day, and I don't see him here tonight. So on that one, what I'd ask you to do is just authorize the mayor to sign that. This incentive is going to be for 3 years because he's not bringing in as many workers as he did the 2 previous businesses, and it will be a lesser percentage of the building permit as well.
And have you got an idea on a start date? Have you? And he's,
I believe it's going to be sometime next year.
He's closed on the building. He's
correct. So again, I'm not sure, but sometime probably the beginning of the year.
January 1.
Well, like I said, I would leave that to you. Maybe we can set up a meeting between you and he to put the date on there and sign it.
If someone's comfortable with that.
Just one thing, it does say 5 years in section 5 of this particular one. I don't know if that's. On page 9.
So that was the initial application. He requested it for 5 years. He didn't meet the criteria for 5 years. So that's why we put it in, you can see in section 1 of the actual agreement that it addresses it as 3 years.
Thank you, Sean. If someone's prepared to make a motion leaving that start date for discussion between Sean and I and the applicant, who could fill that in prior to me signing it.
I would make a motion that we award the incentives to Day Builders, doing business with Spring Up Builders, with this stipulation that the startup date is to be determined by the mayor and staff, and at the time that startup is determined, authorize the mayor to sign into the agreement.
Been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Once again, thanks, Sean. Well done, and we appreciate your hard work and the things that are happening.
Can I just make a comment too
Please.
towards Sean? I'm sure Sean feels like we were attacking him earlier, and I don't want Sean. I don't want you to feel like that was in any way the case. We all worked on this together and tried to hammer out the best. What we seen was the best thing, and we all share in the fact that we missed something. So I would just like to make sure that Sean understands that in no way, shape, or form do I feel like that it was any fault of his.
Thank you.
I really don't think we missed anything.
I wanted to clarify that too,
Yeah,
so go ahead first.
I think we just, I think, it goes without saying that the people who are going to be suddenly have a new competitor in town are probably not going to be happy with the idea that you're offering an incentive to the new guy. You know, I think we knew that. It's just that the rubber's met the road now, you know, and we actually have some agreements in place, and we're having a little fallout as a result, you know, of existing businesses that are complaining or concerned, yeah. And so I really don't think we missed anything, or I don't think it was a mistake, any of it. I think it's just that we're seeing the reality of it now.
Yeah.
And deal with that.
And I would add to that, if you're gonna continue with it, which I hope you will, no matter what the business, there's going to be a competing business that has some concerns about it. And so if you're going to stay the course, which I hope you do, you're going to have to stay the course, and there's going to be some fallout no matter what. One thing Sean and I talked about earlier today, and I'm sure he'll bring up some suggestions on this in the future, long after I'm gone, is the thoughts of, you know, an existing business. If an existing business hires some more people, expands their business, or does a major remodel that would enhance downtown, maybe it could be tweaked a little bit so that those businesses also have an opportunity as they grow and develop to have some incentives. So that would be some, and I'm sure Sean will take a look at that in the future. But I would just echo that we haven't. I don't think we missed anything. It's like Brad said. It's just no matter if you continue with this, which is a good idea, there's going to be a competing business that's going to feel some concern.
You know, I think we intended this not just for a new business. Any existing business is eligible if they go through a growth or an expansion. You know,
and that needs to be probably
they
clarified.
open a second location or something like that. I mean, it isn't just, yeah.
And that could be clarified, and I'm sure Sean will be taking a look at that and bringing something to you in the future. So, Sean, okay. All right. Anybody else want to add anything? Because there was more discussion brought up. Anything more? No takers? All right. Council report on assigned designations. Allison, we'll start with you since you just finished up the biggest ones of the year.
You didn't show up to it.
Festival lights. It was a cold night, and it was a little less attended, and maybe that was because of the cold weather. We've had some struggles this year with the lights. We tried to simplify some of the lights downtown, and that's kind of given us some headache, and so we're trying to maintain the best we can this year. And I have made notes along the way, and I'm going to change a few things in years to come. So appreciate everybody's help. It's a big project. There is so many hands in the pot that it's hard to explain to you what it takes to just put that simple day together, just that day. So anyway, kudos to my committee that are still to this day working. Kudos to the Public Works. John's and his crew has in the last couple of weeks helped a lot with trying to get the light situation fixed, and I truly appreciate that.
Thank you, and thanks for everything you do. Appreciate you. Brad.
I don't really have anything to report, other than I'm just, because it is economic development, I am excited to see the fruition of what we've been working on for a long time actually happening before I have to stand down from this position, so I'm grateful for that. But comprehensive plan is still being updated. I mean, those elements are still being worked over, and other than that, I really don't have anything to report on.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate you. Todd?
Well, I remember the first time this incentive program was brought up, and it was Brad doing the homework. and pushing the numbers, so I give him 2 thumbs up. He's kind of the father of the idea, so I think it's going to serve us well and for a long time after we're all dead and gone. As far as my assignments, we have a full rec board now with 2 new members. They held their first meeting. We have a full P&Z now with the appointment from last time. Basketball starts in January for the rec league, and other than that, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you. Terry?
About the only thing I have as far as my duties right now is just a reminder that this coming Friday, December 13th, is newly elected officials training in Chubbuck. It's my understanding that Dan and Brent have signed up to attend those, but if anybody else has the desire to go, there's always seems to be new information there, reminders of do's and don'ts and advice on how to handle a good council.
Yeah, Linda, did we get Mr. Tittenser signed up for that?
He had a scheduling conflict.
Did he? Dang.
And also a reminder, keep on your calendars if you care to attend. January 23rd is the AIC City Officials Day at the Capitol. That's a great opportunity for city officials to meet face-to-face with your local senators and representatives, so that when you have an issue and you make a phone call to one of these people, that there's a name and a face recognition. So when you're visiting with them, they know who you're talking to. It definitely helps to have that rapport with our officials at the state capitol. So I would encourage anybody that can make it to that to also attend that.
Is there an agenda online for that?
I don't know if there's an agenda. There is a sign up for it now. I can't remember for sure if the sign up actually just barely went on a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm not 100% sure if the agenda is there, but I believe it is.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate you. And we are adjourned.